March 8th, it's Sunday. I'm going to share three stories and some quick commentary. Start with Iran. After the United States and Israel carried out strikes that killed Iran's supreme leader, China's action was, well, extremely restrained. A lot of people immediately started mocking Beijing. They say, well, China talks big about challenging the international order, but when things actually happen, Venezuela gets hit, Iran gets hit, China basically just sent angry letters, and that's it. But interestingly, both The Economist and Wall Street Journal point out something different. China may actually be less dependent on Iran than many people assume. Yeah, China buys a lot of oil, but what Beijing really cares about is regional stability and its relationships with Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. China also knows its potential influence in the Middle East is limited. What it's really hoping for is something much simpler: economic benefits after the dust settles. In other words, reconstruction. So yeah, on the surface, China didn't gain much prestige from this situation. It doesn't look good to China. But that doesn't automatically mean China is the big loser. A lot of commentators frame this as Trump just hit Iran, and by extension hits China as well. Some Chinese commentators even say the United States military is teaching China how to really behave. But that's a very straightforward interpretation. It may also be too simplistic or sometimes naive, because China has never tried to be the global policeman in the Middle East. Anyways, China is there to do business, sell goods, buy oil, promote the yuan slowly, and keep things relatively stable. Beijing does not need Iran to win. All China really needs is this. Let's say after the war ends, China would want the oil to keep flowing, shipping lanes to keep open, and if reconstruction begins, China companies want to be part of it. And that's enough. In diplomacy, saving face is overrated. It's nothing about ego. Sometimes the smartest move is just to be cold-blooded and calculated. And Beijing's logic towards Iran is actually very simple. If your regime survives, we'll keep buying your oil, and we're going to be your ally. I'm going to give you this moral support, just like we've been doing for years. But if your regime collapses and reconstruction starts, well, we're going to send our Chinese walkers, companies, and we're going to rebuild the infrastructure. So either way, China finds its role. So China in the Middle East isn't really a system builder. It's more like an opportunist player that tries to benefit under almost any circumstances. Some people might say, well, it doesn't look good, or it's not gonna help China to become a global leader in the future years to come. But that's how geopolitics often works, which is why framing global politics as friends versus enemies is kindergarten level thinking, I would say. Real questions are: who pays the security costs, who captures the energy and reconstruction profits, and who gets stuck in a war longer. From Beijing's perspective, if the United States once again gets pulled deeper into Middle Eastern conflicts, China may feel more comfortable in Asia, perhaps. Maybe that's part of Beijing's calculation too. Now, moving on to the second story on AI. The United States government and major AI companies are now moving into what you might call a negotiation phase, and the negotiation only works if both sides have leverage. In the AI world, leverage means one thing. You cannot allow one single company to dominate everything. If there's Anthropic, there must also be OpenAI. If both companies want to go public someday, they will compete aggressively with each other. They would attack each other. And that competition actually gives the United States government margin power. The recent conflict between the government and Anthropic exposed something important. AI safety concerns are getting worse. Washington wants to deploy AI quickly across military and government systems. Anthropic, on the other hand, has been pushing the limit certain uses of AI, such as mass surveillance or fully autonomous weapons. Maybe they genuinely believe in those restrictions. I don't know. Or maybe it's just part of this branding. Oh, we're Anthropic, we're the responsible one. Either way, the media response has been predictable. Warnings that AI could soon cause real harm in these areas, like cyber attacks, biological risks. Now here's the real issue. If a company adds safety restrictions and becomes less competitive in government contracts, while other companies say, hey, we have fewer restrictions, so we can do whatever you need, guess which one will have the contract in the end? So it's a very simple story. The system ends up rewarding the more aggressive players, the one who has lower bar. In other words, the current structure may be rewarding risk-taking and punishing restraint. One company warns this technology could enable mass surveillance or cyber attacks. Other companies say, no problem, our model can do whatever you want. So the second one will win. Really, the debate is not about will AI replace humans. The real question is, will government actually slow AI deployment and regulate it, or will they treat AI as just another strategic bargaining tool? Last story is on Britain. Well, Britain's position during the war with Iran has been a little bit awkward, I have to say. But the awkwardness isn't really about whether Prime Minister Starmer chose the right side or the wrong side. It's the uncomfortable reality that Britain's position may no longer matter very much. The conflict exposes three realities. First, the shadow of the Iraq War still hangs over British politics. Starmer's cautious approach clearly irritates Donald Trump. But the most brutal reality is, in Washington's perspective, Britain's importance has significantly declined. At first, Britain refused to allow the United States to use one of its military bases because of legal concerns. Eventually, Britain still ended up providing support in defensive operations, but the more interesting point is not that London and Washington argued, is that they may now be operating under very different worldviews. Britain still approaches foreign policy through its traditional framework of international law, diplomacy, and coalition building. Trump's approach is very different. Peace through strength, deterrence through overwhelming force. Change the facts on the ground, and then new rules will follow. These are two different operating systems, and the hard truth is this. From American perspective, Britain is no longer a decisive variable. If the United States decides to strike a country like Iran, it does not need congressional authorization, nor UN approval, nor NATO consensus. A few carrier strike groups, a few weeks of deployment, that's it. And the United States can launch overwhelming military force. Even if Britain objects, the war still happens. And that is why it may no longer make sense to view Britain as a second America. Britain today is more like a high-end auxiliary power. It has nuclear weapons. It has a major financial center. It can speak, but it rarely changes Washington's decisions. So here's the bigger question. Are we really entering a multipolar world, or are we actually moving back towards something closer to one dominant power reshaping the system? The institutions built after the World War, global trade system, the UN framework, they're all weakening. And the United States seems increasingly focused on something different. They want to fix or even replace the current system. Expect allies to carry more responsibility, and on critical geopolitical questions, preferably stand on the American side. If not, Washington may start renegotiating relationships with its allies one by one. That may be the emerging rule of the new order. Thanks for listening.